A fisherman found a talking fish, and it demanded his voice. The sea was calm that morning, eerily calm, like it was holding its breath. Elias, a fisherman of 30 years, had spent his life reading the waves, but today they felt different. Too smooth. Too silent. Even the gulls circling above seemed hesitant to cry out, as if the ocean below them wasn't quite the same ocean as yesterday. Elias pushed his small wooden boat farther out into the mist, the oars groaning against their locks. He should have turned back, his instincts screamed at him, but hunger was stronger than fear. He hadn't caught enough in weeks, and the village was beginning to whisper about him, about his failing nets, about his bad luck. Then it happened. His line tugged. Not the sharp, desperate pull of a struggling fish, but a slow, steady weight, as though something vast beneath the water had simply chosen to let itself be caught. Elias's heart hammered as he gripped the rod and pulled. The rope burned against his palms, the wood of the boat creaking under the strain. Finally, with a splash, it broke the surface. A fish. Silver-scaled, eyes blacker than pitch. It was larger than any Elias had ever seen, glistening like it had swallowed starlight. But what froze him wasn't its size. It was the voice. Fisherman. The word slithered out from its lips like water leaking through cracks. Elias stumbled backward in the boat, nearly dropping the line. The fish's mouth opened again, impossibly wide, and the sound that followed wasn't natural. It wasn't made for human ears. "I hunger," it whispered. "I want your voice." Elias's skin prickled cold. He thought he'd gone mad, that hunger and loneliness had warped his senses. But then the fish's scales rippled, and its eyes blinked with a human rhythm. He tried to speak, to curse it, to pray, but nothing came. Not even a whisper. The fish's mouth curled upward in something that looked disturbingly like a smile. "Good," it rasped. "You've given me what I asked for." Elias clutched his throat, his chest heaving, but the soundless air clawed at his lungs. He tried again and again, but his voice was gone. The fish slipped free of the hook and splashed back into the depths, leaving the boat rocking violently. Elias sat frozen, his hands trembling, his mouth opening in silent horror. The sea around him rippled, almost as if laughing. And though the gulls finally cried overhead, their shrieks sounded strangely like his own voice, calling from far, far away. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he swore he heard the fish's voice echoing in his head. "Give me your voice, give me your voice." It was not like a dream. It was sharper, more insistent, as if the words were vibrating inside his skull. He sat up in the dark, clutching his throat. The night air was heavy with the scent of salt water drifting in from the harbor. The waves lapped against the shore with a strange rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Against his better judgment, Elias grabbed a lantern and stumbled back to the pier. The sea was pitch black, but when he held the lantern over the water, he thought he saw something move, a ripple that wasn't from the tide. And then the voice came again, this time rising straight from the water. "Elias, fisherman, you still owe me." The sound made his skin crawl. It was the same voice as before, deep, hollow, and strangely human. Elias's heart pounded as he leaned over the edge, scanning the water. The lantern flickered. There it was. The fish. Its eyes glowed faintly in the dark, like wet pearls catching the lantern light. Its mouth opened and closed, but the voice came not from its lips, but from the depths of the sea itself. "You took me from my home," the fish said, its voice curling through the night. "And for that, I will take what belongs to you." Elias staggered back, almost dropping the lantern. "Stay away from me," he whispered, though his voice cracked with fear. The fish tilted its head, its scales glistening as if wet with blood instead of water. "Your voice is mine. If you do not give it freely, the sea will take it." Elias turned and ran, the echo of the fish's words following him like footsteps in the dark. He didn't stop until he reached his shack, slamming the door shut and barring it with trembling hands. For the rest of the night, he sat in silence. But when dawn came, and he tried to greet the morning with a prayer, nothing came out. His lips moved, but his voice was gone. He clutched his throat in horror. The fish hadn't needed him to agree. It had already begun to take what it wanted. And far out at sea, beneath the rolling waves, something was waiting, listening. Morning came, but Elias felt no relief. His throat burned, and when he tried again to speak, only a rasp of air escaped. Panic surged through him. He stumbled to the harbor where other fishermen prepared their nets. "Morning, Elias," one of them called. But Elias couldn't respond. He opened his mouth, tried to force sound, but his voice had been ripped away. The men laughed nervously, thinking he was playing a cruel trick. But Elias's eyes told the truth, wide, desperate, terrified. The old harbor master, a stooped man named Marlowe, frowned. "The sea's taken something from him," he muttered. "I've seen it before." Elias froze. "Seen it before?" He grabbed Marlowe's sleeve, trying to demand answers, but no words came. Only his frantic gestures. Marlowe's eyes narrowed, heavy with memory. "You pulled something out of the water you shouldn't have, didn't you? A fish that shouldn't exist. That's how it starts." Elias's breath caught. His hands trembled as he nodded. The old man leaned closer. "Long ago, before this village was built, they say there was a bargain between the fisherman and the sea. The ocean gives its bounty, but it demands voices in return. Not lives' voices. The chosen fisherman would cast his nets, catch the creature, and surrender his voice to keep the waters calm." Elias's blood ran cold. "But," Marlowe whispered, glancing nervously at the waves, "if a man refuses, or if he fights the sea's will, worse things rise from below." Elias stumbled back, lantern-jawed with terror. This wasn't just a curse, it was an ancient pact, and now he was caught in it. That night, sleep was impossible. He sat by the window, staring at the dark sea. The silence inside his chest felt unbearable, like someone had reached into him and stolen not just his voice, but his very soul. Then, faintly, through the roar of the tide, he heard singing. A woman's voice, soft, sorrowful, haunting. He rose and staggered to the shore, drawn by the melody. There, on the wet rocks, sat a figure cloaked in silver water. Her face was pale as moonlight, her eyes black as the deep. She sang with a voice that shook the marrow of his bones. "You are mine now, fisherman," she whispered between notes. "The sea chose you. Return what you owe, or drown in silence forever." Elias fell to his knees, gripping his throat. His breath came ragged, silent, desperate. The figure smiled, her teeth sharp as shattered shells. The sea wasn't done with him. This was only the beginning. The fisherman no longer slept. His nights were filled with dreams where the fish sat at the edge of his bed, its gills flaring, its eyes unblinking. In those visions, he could hear the voice it had stolen from him, his own words, his own cries, pouring endlessly from its mouth, twisting into something monstrous. When he awoke, his throat burned as if he had screamed all night, though no sound ever came out. He tried not to return to the shore. He locked his doors, shut his windows, and buried his nets deep in the shed. But the sea was patient. Every night, the sound of rushing water pressed against his ears as though the tide itself had entered his home. The floorboards grew damp with salt, and he woke to the smell of brine soaking his pillow. One evening, exhausted and trembling, he stumbled outside to find puddles of seawater stretching from his doorstep toward the path that led to the beach. It was as if the sea was calling him back, dragging him with invisible hands. And against his will, he followed. The moonlight cut sharp across the waves, and there, waiting exactly where he had first pulled it from the water, was the fish. But it had grown. Its body now stretched longer than his arms, and its scales glistened like knives in the pale light. When it spoke, his stolen voice echoed over the water, deeper now, more commanding. "Return what you took from me." The fisherman shook his head, tears streaming down his face. He hadn't taken anything. This creature had stolen from him. But when he tried to scream the truth, only silence fell from his lips. The fish slithered closer, its body writhing unnaturally against the shore as though the sea could not contain it. From its gaping mouth spilled not only his voice but countless others, men, women, even children, all begging, sobbing, screaming for release. It was a chorus of agony, bound to the creature's breath. He staggered backward, heart racing. The truth clawed at his mind. He wasn't the first. Others had met the fish before him. Others had given up more than just their voices. The creature's scales rattled like chains as it advanced. Its eyes glowed with a hunger beyond comprehension. And the fisherman knew, with a sinking horror, that unless he found a way to escape, he would not be the last. The fisherman stumbled backward into the sand, his chest heaving, though no sound escaped his lips. The creature loomed larger than before, each ripple of its scales reflecting the pale moonlight like broken glass. From its mouth, the endless chorus of stolen voices wailed, a storm of human despair. He covered his ears, but the cries crawled inside his skull. He could hear himself among them, pleading, begging, screaming words he never spoke. It was as if the fish had rewritten him, hollowed him out, and filled the empty spaces with its own hunger. "Give yourself to me," it demanded through his voice. "Join them. You cannot fight the sea." The fisherman's hands trembled. His mind whirled back to the day he first pulled it from the net. If he had thrown it back, would he still be whole? Or had the trap been set the moment he touched its scales? He turned and ran down the beach, his bare feet slapping against wet sand. The fish followed, not swimming but dragging itself across the shore, its body twisting like a serpent, its mouth splitting wider and wider. Each movement left deep grooves in the earth, as though it carried the weight of all the voices it had consumed. He reached the cliffside where the rocks cut jagged into the sea. His lungs burned, his legs shook, but he didn't stop. He looked down at the black waves crashing against the stones and knew he had only one choice. If the sea had taken his voice, then he would give it everything. He spread his arms wide, tears streaking his face, and leapt. For a moment, the world froze. Salt spray struck his skin like needles. His body plunged into the freezing depths. And when the water closed over him, something inside him tore free. The fish was waiting below. Its eyes glowed like lanterns in the abyss. Its mouth opened, and this time no voices came. Instead, the fisherman felt his own silence surge into it, his breath, his last fragment of will. The sea swallowed him whole. When the waves calmed, the beach was empty. Only the tide remained, washing over the grooves carved in the sand. But out at sea, a new sound began to rise. A voice. Deep, rough, broken, yet familiar. It was his voice, now pouring from the fish's mouth, added to the eternal choir of the drowned. And the villagers swore, from that night on, that if you stood by the shore at midnight, you could hear the fisherman calling from the waves, warning others, in his own words, never to listen when the sea begins to speak.